Hello and welcome to the show. So I was invited to take part once again in the World Rallycross Esports event. In fact, they've got a little mini championship going on. There's 4 rounds coming up. Hopefully I'll be racing in all of them. The first round would be tackling the Marina circuit. Now, this is an interesting track. It's quite dangerous, shall we say, with the curbs, as you may have noticed. They are vicious. It is very, very easy to roll the cars. Incredibly easy to roll the vehicles on the curb. It's kind of a fun circuit, though, I have to say. I mean, you know, it uses the Formula 1, some of the Formula 1 circuit, some of the main circuit. Takes a little bit getting used to. It is a lot more tarmac than quite a lot of the, say, like a normal rallycross circuit that you would deal with. But yeah, it's an interesting one to race around with, as traditionally is with rallycross circuits. Quite a difficult place to overtake. It is quite difficult to get passes done. However, I thought I'd done some practice. I thought I was actually not doing too badly. I was kind of getting the hang of this circuit as we went into the event. So we'll be doing the full rallycross format. If you like, we'd have 4 qualifying heats, and then the top 10 in this would be making it through to the semi-finals. Which is the way that the game works. We can only have 5 cars in each. So for that first race, kind of a little bit daunting. We had Bakkerud, we had Van der Linde, and we had Bakuska. For some reason, the way the draws would work, I'd be racing against Bakuska for pretty much all of the races. It's just how the things came out. I'd be sticking with the Audi for this one. Starting in the middle is always the run to the first corner is always a little bit interesting, shall we say, with this. I haven't had the greatest of lucks when it comes to the starts of these races. So we get off the line, everybody gets off the line pretty similarly. Now I'm in the middle, we get a clonk from one side, we get clonked into the side of Bakkerud's car, and we get spun around. Now the thing is, yes, we ended up pointing the wrong way. It didn't actually cost me that much time, and of course these lot here were all a little bit bunched up and all a little bit slow on this sort of opening lap. I mean, I fell to the back of the group, but I wasn't, I didn't lose crazy amounts of time. You've been a rallycross car, you can just smack it through the gears and find a way to get it going. This little chicane is interesting fun. That's possibly one of the most important corners on the track. How you get out of that chicane can really make a difference to your lap. We tried to sort of slide up the inside. Unfortunately, I was expecting Bakkerud to be a little bit further away. In all of that one wasn't. Now, I had hoped to take the Joker lap and stay out of trouble. Like, as we took that corner, it looked like the vehicle ahead was going to take the normal lap. I guess maybe at the last minute it changed his mind to dive in the Joker lap. So I didn't really want to be having another car to follow. I kind of wanted some clean air. I know that's a little bit of a strange thing to say in perhaps rallycross terms. We're again almost to the inside at the hairpin. But yeah, you kind of don't want cars around you because, while you're having a race this is your overall finishing time that counts, because between all of the heats, they make a leaderboard of the actual race finishing times, and I don't want to be stuck fighting another car. When you're fighting another car, you're going quite slowly, you maybe can't take your normal lines, so we're getting back up at this hairpin. I'm going to get things a little bit wrong in a couple of places. The thing I found a little bit with this circuit is it's a lot more about how you get the car off the corner. I was also taking a slightly different line to what this is here at turn 1. I was taking a slightly different line to just about everybody else. A lot of drivers are really throwing it sideways through there, and I was taking a lot sort of smoother approach. Now I think in dirt, chucking the car around is a smidge faster, but I could be more consistent and get more speed with this smoother approach in a couple of places. That's why I was driving in that manner. I could just be a bit more consistent with the car, and not making mistakes is very, very important in this one. I mean, as the laps ticked over, we actually lost touch a little bit to the back of the car ahead. The front 2 hadn't taken their Jokers. This time now Van der Linde had, I believe, just taken the Joker and popped out in 2nd place. Still got to be very mindful of these curbs. You clip anything just a slight bit too hard and you are going to launch the car over onto the roof. Now, with the way these curbs are, if you do fall over, you do tend to land on it's quite often you land on your wheels and can carry on. I don't know, it's just how it works. You do often kind of get away with it. So we'd actually had kind of a good lap so far in catching back to Bakkerud, but I hit the curb too hard on the inside. Because we had started to reel him in, but yeah, that's the danger you run. I'm trying to make up that little bit of time. You're trying to get a little bit closer perhaps to the apex or whatever. I'd seen his car had launched a little bit onto its side, and yeah, I kind of went to follow. It wasn't the best of opening runs. We'd lost time at the start. We'd been pointing backwards. We'd spun it around. A little mistake at the end. It wasn't terrible. We hadn't lost a huge amount of time. It was very, very close. vehicles up ahead, especially between Bakuska and Baccarat there. It's ridiculous. I didn't actually realise until seeing that now just quite how close the pair of them had been across the finish line. So, yeah, it's been an interesting time. On to the second race. Yes, I was racing up against VA supercar driver. Scott Pye was in this one. Van Gisbergen was in this as well. I sadly never got a race against him. He is unbelievably quick. But I never did get to go in a heat against him. This time around, we would have a full complement of 5 vehicles, and I would once again be starting in the middle. A little bit scary. It's yeah. It's one of those that sometimes I was wondering, maybe just not going too crazy. I said, like, maybe just sort of hold back a smidge in towards turn 1. Not necessarily, like, unless you get a really good launch, was one of the things, because there is a slight desync sometimes between green lights between people, and that's what we saw on this one. I launched, and I believe it was the Mini on the outside. We get the green light a fraction of a second before the other cars. It's unfortunate, just something that can happen with the game. So in this one, there's no need to be, maybe a little bit slower into turn 1. I was busy battling the Mini, trying to get to the inside on the exit. I couldn't quite do it. Now, the cars behind were all busy having a big fight as well as we head up towards the chicane. The Mini's going very sideways in there. Now, I get the transition through here, end up bumping into the back of the Mini, almost put it round. And I've got to try to be really careful here not to... I just didn't want to spin the Mini through all of this. The problem is, in trying to not spin the Mini, I have to check up a little bit, and then there is a gap that cars take. We get a little bit of a nudge from the McGann as it battles over the curbs. Cars ahead were battling as well. I figured, right, we've already got a slow line here. I'm going to jump into the Joker lap now. Again, this is a case of take yourself out of trouble. That group looked like we were going to have a big old fight, so I'm better off taking the Joker lap, getting the clean air. And again, it's about the finishing time. As much as I want to come further up the leaderboard, as much as I want to be higher up in the standings, or in the race, I should say, it's all about the race time. So yeah, figured jump out of the big squabbles, and we might stand a little bit of a chance. And you never know what's going to happen with the groups ahead. If they start fighting one another, maybe you can sneak a few positions in all of this. And I mean, you can see up ahead, we had Blomqvist and Pye were having a big old fight running around the hairpin. So the McGann goes and dives into the Joker lap. Now, I was hoping I could come out ahead. The difference between the Joker lap and the normal lap isn't massive. When we head through the first corner, the McGann sort of chucks it around the outside. It was so close to managing to make that one stick, but not quite, as the Renault found a way past. And this would kind of be where I would be for this race. We'd lost a little bit too much time early on in all of this. And, when you've only got 4 laps, if you lose a couple of seconds in a battle, that's all it can take. Can drop you a little bit down. I almost so nearly smacked it into the tyre bundle. We actually had a good run into this hairpin, but couldn't quite get alongside. We're still battling away with the McGann through this next section, but it's just, where do you pass? Can you have a dive in towards this first corner? Not really, and I actually overshoot it just a smidge through there. Scott Pye's taking that line that time around. There's a little bit more similar line. The Mini up ahead had lost a little bit of time through all of this as we head on to the back straight. Now I'm too far back. This is one of the better overtaking spots, perhaps, if you can go for a very big dive, but we were too far away. We'll try and get the change of direction, and actually I dropped the revs too far down in that one. I didn't quite sort of keep the wheels spinning, and I didn't downshift in time. So it's just those little things, you just lost a little bit of time going through all that. And as we head well, this is the final lap, the run to line. There was a Fiesta, I believe, that hadn't jokered yet. That dove into the Joker lap. I was hoping I could maybe beat it across the line. We end up, I think I squished it against the wall, pretty much. Now, with the desync at the start, I believe the time is added on back at the end, which is how, despite the fact I think I crossed the line a fraction ahead, it's a 208, sorry, fraction ahead of the 208, it actually goes the other way because of that desyncing at the start. Scott Pye did get a time penalty. I think it was for bouncing across the inside at turn 1. Behind me, there was a little bit of mayhem going on, so there was a time penalty in that one. Unfortunately, it was an exciting race though. I'd been there or thereabouts, even if I was a little bit just at the back. It was a good race. So we move on to Heat 3, and at this point, I think I was sat about 10th, 11th in the around there. So because I hadn't been in any massive accidents, I hadn't been massively slow. Consistency was doing fairly well. We were back racing against Bakuska and Baccarat in this. Well, in fact, we were just ordering these guys in previous ones. It was a good start for me. It was just try and get through. Everyone had got off the line fairly evenly. It's try and get off to as clean a start as possible. We get sort of battered a little bit. We come out better than Baccarat, but ended up over the curb. Nobody rolled though. We're 3 wide into the hairpin, and I'm stuck having to try and go the long way around. Not really the ideal line on the outside. Now, as far as track limits goes, we were allowed to go as far as the game would let us, which meant we could go sort of to the outside. of that section. And unfortunately, as we were all kind of checking up, I think Backer tried to throw the car at the inside of me through there, but I was having to not end up in the back of the Peugeot ahead of me, and it just all came together a little bit through that section. I think Backer did, brush the tyre bundle, obviously got going fairly well. I kept going for kind of the early joker in this one. It was kind of a just stay out of trouble, because I'd known in this particular round some of the other heats had been a bit scruffy, and if I was going to be making up some positions, a couple of cars had rolled. Charles Leclerc was racing in this one. Again, sadly never got to race against him, but he'd rolled out of one of these. A few other vehicles had as well, and again, it was important to get that good overall finishing position. And we were back on the back of the Audi here, and not quite enough. We're not being slowed down by the Audi ahead. It's I kind of liked having a car to chase sometimes. When you're driving around on your roads, I think you kind of fall into, I say like into a safe rhythm, but not necessarily a quick rhythm. So yeah, I certainly don't mind having a car to try and chase down. And I was the only one that had taken a joker lap at this point. So if vehicles ahead started fighting one another, that was going to have me theoretically, hopefully, jump out in front of them as you go around the hairpin. Bakuska was running away a little bit up at the front of this one. Actually set a half-decent lap, 39.7. Because the lap here is always a little bit strange, because the start-finish line, if you have to continue on to the next lap, the start-finish line, you've got to brake long before it. If you're at the end of the race, you just don't brake, you just sort of throw the car across. So 39.7, not for me, not too bad. Not the fastest out there, no. We're about half a second down on some of the quicker drivers. But it was, yeah, not a bad lap. And we're certainly having to push in this one. The Peugeot jumps into the joker lap. Now, I think the Peugeot might have had a trouble through the joker lap, because we pop out the other side, and I was expecting it to be a lot closer, and I don't see it. Quite possible it hit the curb and went for a tumble back there. It is, yes, you can roll in the joker lap as well. As we head on to the final lap, I mean, I just had to stay close to Backer. We were right there, and while Bakuska was way out in front, wasn't going to matter too much. We're going to joker and come out with the lead. If I could just stay on the back of Backer and, lose too much time going through the joker. We actually were closing on this final lap as well. It was a half-decent lap from me here, and we head up towards the hairpin. I'd almost got my car to the inside. I didn't necessarily I probably shouldn't really have gone for anything there, as in case there was a gap, because that car was always going to dive off to the inside. We'd run up towards the finish line, and it was going to be a second place for me in this one. Not a terrible time either, considering a little bit of battling along the way. Yeah, not too disappointed with that time whatsoever. As I said, this was an important one because other heats had been a smidge scruffy in places. Other heats had battles, had trouble, perhaps, and yeah, we got a good overall time for this one. A pretty clean run, and hadn't been stuck in traffic, so that was very, very helpful indeed. We move on to the fourth and final of the qualifiers. Now, at this point, I was sat around the 10th place, so I was kind of on the border of making my way into the semi-finals. We said we needed a top 10 here, and again, I knew I needed a clean run in this one. The heats that had gone before had been a little bit scruffy in places. Not crazy, not ridiculous. So yeah, it was a case of knew I needed to run my own race. Couldn't afford to go for a roll. Couldn't afford to get slowed down. Now this one was in the wet. Well, it was a wet circuit. It was raining, and that does change things a little bit. Not the craziest of differences, but there is just less grip. There is less grip around here as we get off the line again. It was actually a fairly good start from me on the inside. Now, I was trying to stay out of trouble. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a nudge across the inside curb. We were heading towards it fine, and then we get just a little bit of a bump. And the problem is, as I said, you can't go over that curb. Once I'm heading towards that curb, I can't just launch the car across it because I'm going to roll. So we have to slow down. Unfortunately, me checking up to not hit the curbs, the cars behind me both end up getting slowed down in all of that. So they get stacked up behind. They both lose a little bit of time. As I said, in the wet, it's a little bit more tricky. It's very easy to either slide the car around far too much, or it's actually quite easy to get an awful lot of understeer. You can really get a huge amount of understeer sometimes if you don't quite get things right with the vehicle. So yeah, you've got to be a smidge careful with the car. Again, we get clip the curb. I mean, that's not too bad or a two-wheeled moment, I have to say. As far as two-wheeled antics go, that one is not particularly terrible. Now, this particular race, I didn't take a joker on the first time. I didn't really feel like I'd lost that much time. I thought we were okay. I probably should have done in hindsight in this one. So as we're running around, Blomqvist is up in third place behind us. Was very, very quick as well. I mean, I could see the car was catching me in the rear view in the rearview mirror a bit. Now, overtaking here is super difficult. I probably should have taken the Joker on the first lap, or maybe even, as I say, to be fair, at this point it didn't really matter what lap I took a Joker on, because Blomqvist has gone this time around, and I was kind of expecting the car to pop out the other side in front of me. Now, in the grand scheme of things, as much as I wanted to get a second, I mean, I don't want to win, of course, you always do, but as much as I wanted to get a second place, I also knew the finishing time was important, because, said, other heats hadn't necessarily been, I say, 100% clean, and this one, despite, you know, a little bit of time lost at the start, had been fairly good. I hadn't lost crazy amounts of time fighting with anybody. We'd had one bump on a curb, but nothing ridiculous, so as we head up around the hairpin. I could see Blomqvist was quite close. I knew jumping in the Joker lap was going to end up being, I was going to lose the second place. I say I was kind of okay with it. I just wasn't quick enough to hold on to the second. I also, and I made a bit of a mistake going towards the turn one. I didn't quite know where I was braking on that sort of Joker lap in the wet. Just made a bit of a hash of it. Lost my train of thought completely, having a little bit of an incident, having a little bit. Oh, yeah, I didn't want a Joker lap on the final lap because the way the Joker lap works and the way it like feeds into turn one. If you do it on a flying lap, the lap that follows, because you kind of take like a wider line into turn one, the lap that follows is a little bit quicker. So if you lose that, if you take the Joker lap on the final lap, so yeah, the plan was I never wanted to take the Joker lap on the final lap if I could avoid it because I'd make up time elsewhere. We couldn't match the pace. We couldn't match the pace of Blomqvist as we headed up towards the finish line. It'd be very, very close between the leads two, but the good news for me was that it was a decent time. The 2:56 was a very quick time. I think that was about 5th place overall in the standings. This was a very, very quick heat, as it turned out, because we were a little bit more spread out. We were a little bit, we were clean in terms of the racing. I didn't quite get my laps, couldn't quite keep up with Blomqvist, but was pretty good. And overall, after the 4 qualifying heats, this is how the leaderboard looked. Through some consistency, through some not making too many mistakes, and not necessarily being, there were little mistakes made, but nothing massive, we ended up in 8th place. We had got ourselves into, as I said, Van Gisbergen, unbelievably fast in these cars. Van Gisbergen is fast in just about whatever he drives, and apparently on here is also very, very quick. The two Hansen, second and third. As I said, I raced against Bakuska in 3 out of 4 races. He ended up in 4th, again through consistency, just not being involved in too many races, and was pretty quick, given the right sort of circumstances. So, we move on to the semi-finals. This was going to like a dusk setting. I don't really like the lighting for this one particularly. I drive on bonnet camera, and there's a couple of corners where you turn and you just can't see a thing because the sun's at an annoying angle. That is a full-on racing driver excuse if ever I heard one. It's minorly annoying. I can live with it. You just live with it, find ways to deal with it, but it is a little bit of a pain. Can't do much about it. Just have to go with it. So, qualifying in 8th position, I would be towards the outside. Honestly, I think the outside was... I'd rather start on the outside than the inside in some respects with these races. I feel like I'm... yes, technically speaking, the inside is the kind of better. I feel like I'm safer on the outside, so I wasn't all that disappointed being out here. So we knew Hansen was likely to be... Kevin Hansen was likely to be very quick in these. Again, we had the start line being a little bit on the funky side. 3 of us got off underway. Hansen would go and take the lead while I'd be battling away with the Mini. We'd be on the outside. Now, so to qualify, you had to be top 2. Top 2 automatically qualified. 3rd place between the 2 semi-finals. Whoever got the fastest time in 3rd place would qualify. Now, in the first semi-final, the 3rd place was very, very quick. So this was always really going to be the top 2 that went through unless some miracle happened. And we were following the Peugeot. Now, we had pretty much the spot-on start that we wanted in this one. We could follow Kevin away from the line. We got past the Mini, made a little mistake up at the top of the course. We ended up bouncing our way across the curb. And, I mean, I wasn't being slowed down. I didn't want to take the Joker lap on this one at the start because I could see the battle that was going on behind. As we had Krokstad, we had Bakuska, we were both fighting over that 3rd position. And if I took the Joker lap, I'd get dumped in behind them. Now, of course, sure, they would have to take it at some point as well, but if I'm involved with their fights, I just didn't want to go for that one, particularly. So, yeah, went to stick to the normal lap. This is the corner I say about I don't like the sun. So, the line I take through that corner was to try and get as close to the tyre bundle on the inside, but you just lose sight of it in the sun. And I never hit the tyre bundle, but it was always a danger. Kevin made a little mistake, actually bounced across the curb on the inside through there. And now Krokstad had really caught up to the back of me and went to take the Joker lap. Again, I was having to run I was running my own race at this one. What I didn't realise at the time until afterwards is Krogstad actually hit the tyre bundle on the inside as they went to turn into the Joker lap. So all that time they'd gained sort of catching to the back of me was then lost because they hit the tyre bundle. Having come out of the Joker lap, they were stuck fighting with Bakuska in this one, so they were both ending up going a little bit slow on this. That had again given me a bit of a breather. The Mini, I'm not actually 100% sure what happened. The Mini dropped back a little bit further, although it was kind of in the fight going on at this stage a little bit further back. So I'm just kind of trying to stick with the Peugeot. I didn't quite have the pace of Kevin Hansen through here, but we decided I wanted to Joker this lap. Now the reason I went for the Joker lap this time is I'd seen the cars behind were slow. I'd seen they'd be having their own fights. I really wanted to get out in front of Bakuska. That had been the plan here, is I could have dove out in front. So if I'd taken the Joker lap, I could kind of defend, or the hope was I could kind of defend for the next couple of laps, or maybe the final couple of laps, if they were stuck behind me, rather than leave and have them potentially catch. Because I knew ultimately Krogstad was quicker than I was. So yeah, the plan had been to Joker and get out in front of them and just keep them behind. Bakuska hadn't had a great start to this one, as I was right behind. Unfortunately for me, couldn't really do much on this, and I made the little mistake there, almost diving to the inside. Costs you get one corner a little bit wrong, and you can lose a whole bunch of time. It's just not particularly helpful through this. Again, I'm still taking this slightly tamer line. I mean, the Renault gets a little bit of a sort of a laggy jump around through all of that, and I was back to having to defend. I mean, I had to kind of defend a little bit from the car behind, knowing I also had to be close enough to the Renault ahead that when it took its Joker lap, I'd pop out in, or hopefully pop out in that second place. That was the goal, at least, as we flicked the cars through the chicane. While we'd be all having our own little fight over second place, it was a fun battle. It was, undoubtedly a fun battle over second place. Kevin was kind of running away, just a smidge up at the front, staying out of trouble. Again, Bakuska was liking the final lap Joker, which was unusual, but I think it was the only car that was going for the final lap Joker. Hansen dives through the Joker lap on this one, comes out well in the lead. I say well in the lead. We weren't that far back. As far as my performance goes in the previous ones, we're actually much closer to them in terms of sort of lap speed and overall race time. Still had that Peugeot behind us, sort of all over the back of us, heading down towards this next corner, and I make a little mistake on the way, and I just don't get my braking right. Krogstad goes around the outside. I give space, or Krogstad gave me space on the inside, didn't put me in a tyre bundle. I gave space on the outside through there, not put him across that sort of horrible curb. And annoyingly, just that little error by me was enough to let the Peugeot through. And as we head across the jump up towards the finish line, Bakuska's taken that Joker lap and would end up coming out just between us. Krogstad would get the second place. I would have to settle for fourth in the end of all of that. A little battle. Basically, whichever one of me and Krogstad had come out of that chicane in first was probably going to get second, or come out. The lead of our little battle was going to end up with second. It was a great pass. It was a fantastic overtake. I knew when I went into that corner, I didn't quite get the sort of turn in right, and I just left a gap where that Peugeot could go. And yeah, I didn't quite get it right. And then once they were alongside, I had to leave some space, and yeah, we're able to make the pass stick. It was a fantastically well done overtake. Slightly gutted that I couldn't get the, because all the final was all Peugeot 208. Slightly gutted I couldn't get an Audi into the final. I didn't quite have the pace. It was a lot of consistency across the heats is what got me into the top 10. We actually did have a very, very good semi-final. It was a fantastic battle. Krogstad was quicker than me. There's no doubt about it. Came back from a few bumps and little nudges and was just a little bit faster than I was. And a little error at a very important time cost me a chance of getting into the final. But it was amazing fun. I was definitely a lot more competitive here at Yaz than I had been at the previous rounds, and yeah, I had a huge amount of fun running in this. I mean, up against some ridiculous racing drivers here is still slightly surreal. I would love to have had a chance. Charles Leclerc was running in this. I'd love to have had a chance to race against him. Just the way the heats and so on were drawn, never did. But yeah, this was incredible, and I made it all the way to semi-finals. Almost got into the finals. I shall be looking forward to. Hopefully, I'll be taking part in future rounds of this, as this is an awful lot of fun. I'm starting to get not too bad at Dirt Rally. Got to get more practice in. I think it's going to hell next time out. Got to get some more practice in. See if we can get a little bit faster. See what we can manage to do. Probably not going to beat Van Gisbergen though. Bloody hell. He was going quicker than some of the sim races they had. It's ridiculously fast. That, though, is going to be it for this video. If you want to watch the full broadcast of this, I'll put a link to the World Rallycross video. The whole thing is up on their YouTube channel if you want to go and watch the whole stuff. I would recommend. It is very, very good fun. That, though, is going to be it from me. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, a goodbye.